Hey everyone, thanks for listening today to the 10-Minute Marketing Podcast. This is Sonia Crystal Williams of soniacrystal.com and GoGetterMarketingGroup.com. Today I'm joined by my colleague Kylie.
Hi, Sonia.
Hey there, welcome. All right, so our topic today that we're going to cover is around planning out your social media calendar. And this is a question that comes up. As you all may know, if you listen already, we do a lot of trainings around social media and we run campaigns for clients as well. This is one of those topics, though, that it's a question that comes up in training. And it's a question particularly for people who are a little bit newer to publishing when it comes to running a business account on social media. You know, it's very easy to publish what comes naturally on our own social accounts. But even then, we come across a lot of people in training who have their picks when it comes to social networks, and it's not as easy to generate business content. So to answer that question, how do I plan out what I should be posting and what I should be talking about on social media? We want to give you all some tips on how to make that happen. So here's what I'll say as a great starting point. One, start with the content calendar. Now, here's what I'll tell you in reality. Starting with the content calendar is a good, hard, fast rule. In reality, a lot of companies still don't implement them or execute them. But the reason why we think this is highly valuable is because it gives you the chance to pre organize content in advance. There are always going to be posts and things that come up in real time that you need to talk about. But having that content calendar in place lets you pre-think through themes, holidays, or what we kind of call evergreen topics that you can talk about that just don't really change. They're not time sensitive. This is that type of content. It puts you in a position where, as a marketing manager or a social media manager, you're not racking your brain the day of trying to figure out what are we going to talk about, trying to figure out what am I going to say. So it really puts you in a much stronger position. So our encouragement is when you're planning out social media posts, you need to start with that content calendar. Now, again, in our notes, we'll have a link where you can download a copy of a content calendar that you can use on your own. But also know there are tons of resources out there that you can use to download content calendars. One of our favorites that we started with before we started developing our own custom calendars was the free content calendar offered by HubSpot. So that's a great resource. Check out their blog and their resources if you're looking for a template to start with. Now, when you're laying out this content calendar, before you even dig into thinking about what you're going to post on a day-to-day basis, my recommendation is come up with themes, right? And here's what I mean by this. When you're coming up with themes, you can really think about what are the topics that we're interested in posting about, and can we make sure we're covering some of these topics on a regular basis. Here's a great example. When we first launched social media for a startup here in Atlanta, even though it was a startup, they had a pretty large team in place. They had a team of about 25 people. So one of the themes that we came up with was, hey, we want people to get to know your company and to see the human side. Let's do an ongoing theme where once or twice a month we highlight someone who works on the team. That is going to easily generate, if we do two a month and you've got a team of 24 or 25 people, that's easily 1 year worth of content every other week where you're highlighting a team member. So think about how far ahead you could get with that, and even pre-planning, and you don't have to go as far out as a year. But if you wanted to, if you or your team blocked that time aside and got really far ahead, that's content you already have in place that's not going to shift much. It's not time sensitive. Now, of course, you'll have to pay attention if there are any departures or promotions or anything like that. But again, it's really good content that you have the opportunity to plan out way far in advance. Another theme would be holidays or unique holidays that fit your brand. When we used to do social media for a dog daycare chain here in Atlanta, we were very keen on finding what are the fun dog related holidays that we could pinpoint throughout the year to make sure it gets out on social media. That's another opportunity. If you're thinking ahead, if it's January and you kind of do some research and look for some of those unique holidays like National Mutt Day, Take Your Dog to Work Day, things like that, Adopt a Dog Day. that's a huge opportunity to get additional content on that calendar planned in advance. So think in terms of themes, holidays, unique holidays, highlighting employees or staff. We did some consulting with a restaurant, and for them, Taco Tuesdays was a big deal. If you're a chef, it could be a day of the week that you release recipes. So think about what are some ongoing content themes that we can come up with that would really serve our audience well. And it doesn't have to be formulaic. It doesn't have to be consistently every single week we do this. But when you're first starting out with social media, it does help because it just kind of, again, helps create that continuity and ensuring something gets posted. It's just got to still be interesting to people. So make sure you're serving up content that people are interested in knowing about. So we're going to come up with our themes and topics first. Then we're going to roll that into a content calendar where we can actually assign dates to when that is going to be published. So going back to our example of having a bi-weekly team member feature, and we've got enough to last us a whole year, we can go ahead and start thinking about, well, who are the people we're going to highlight and start assigning dates. All right. Now that leads us to the two next areas. We got to come up with imagery, and we have to come up with captions. What are we going to say in the social media post? So let's first start with the imagery side. As you're planning out your post, you're always going to be thinking about what image is going to go with this. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some instances where you might play around with doing text only post. You could try out text only post on Twitter. You could try it out on LinkedIn, maybe even Facebook, but any other network you're going on, you got to have some kind of visual attached to it. So we need to think about what are our visuals. Now, here's one little tip. There's different ways you can develop visuals. There's graphics you can create. You could do photos. You could even go as far as doing stock images. You could do video content. So you have a lot of choices when it comes to the visual that's going to go up with your post. My recommendation to you is, if you're going the photo route, do photos at your office or with your team, or if you're a virtual company, get people to submit those photos, but do it in bulk. All right. Whenever we're doing things, even internally as a team, a lot of times we're doing it in bulk. We're taking lots of photos. We might spend an afternoon doing it. We might spend a day doing it. When we've coordinated campaigns for clients who might want a professional photo shoot, we're making the best use of their money spent with that photographer and time spent with that photographer by getting that photographer to spend 2 hours capturing literally, at least a good 40 to 60 usable photos. And then we can drip that content out over the next few months. There's no rush to release it all at once. And we might even determine this photo is better on this channel, this photo is better on this channel, depending on what we come back with. So think about photos in bulk when we're thinking about our post planning. If it comes to graphics, I also like to say you can think about graphics in bulk if you work with a designer who can create really good templates for you. And then you can use those templates interchangeably as you're posting. So our personal formula as a team is our graphic designer prepares templates for us using Canva. I'm not a huge Photoshop user. I'm not a designer. I know the basics of Photoshop, but it's not something fun I like to play in. Canva, however, easy, quick, fast to use. So our professional designer that we hired will create a series of maybe 7 to 8 templates that we can pick and choose from. And then when we're publishing graphics for our social media post, we're pulling from a library of professionally designed templates that already have our brand logo, our color scheme, things of that nature. So that's a really huge piece that you could also look at that will help you with your imagery. Videos can vary. You can take your own video footage. You could, again, have a videographer come out, but if you do, knock out multiple videos at once. And even same thing, if you're doing your own internal video, we on a regular basis, if we're ever doing our own internal video within the office, then we usually knock out a good 3 or 4 videos at a time. And again, we might drip that out, and that at least gives us, if we do it once a week, 1 month of content. It puts us in a position where we're always staying ahead of schedule. So when you're planning your post, think about how can I take these ways and apply it to get ahead of schedule and have this content scheduled in advance so that when current events come up, I can put my energy and effort into figuring out how to promote those. So once we've come up with, hey, we've got a content calendar structure in place, we know what themes we're running with, we now have our ideas on how we're going to execute imagery based on those themes and topics, then we need to actually write captions, okay? And the reason why I like to do imagery first is sometimes I can look at a picture and that's what's going to drive what we say in the actual caption. So you guys don't overthink this process. It doesn't have to always be formal, but it also very much depends on the nature of your brand. If you work for a brand or you are a brand that's very formal, and your language needs to sound like that, fine. Most of the posts on social media though are meant to be conversation. Remember, it's social media, all right? So we're using it as a communication tool to reach our audience and grow our customer base and our follower base, but also remember, you're just talking to people, right? So don't overthink it. Sometimes when you look at a picture and you come up with a caption in your mind, go with it. Sometimes your first instinct might be best, to test things out. But with captions, again, really base it on maybe the image, base it on the themes. Look at current events or trends that might be happening, and then there are some kind of formulaic ways, that you could come up with, ways to write your captions. You could ask people for their opinion. You could say pick one, A, B, or C. You could say, when I was younger, I used to do this, fill in the blank. And then you could have a picture to go with that. So there are different ways that you could generate captions. And depending on how you position the caption also might depend on what type of engagement you get. If you want engagement, ask a question. If you want engagement, get people to fill in the blank. Ask people their opinion about something. Get a conversation going. And then if you're trying to just get clicks to your website, make sure you've got that link, in the text for people to read. And sometimes it's not just the link will generate on its own and be there for people to click, but sometimes even having that link right there in the caption gets people more likely to click on it. So keep those things in mind as you're generating, your caption. Also know that it's not a bad thing to find ways to repurpose content. So if you have a video, if your company's been doing social media for a while and you have a video or an image or a post that did really well and it was a year since you last used it, on some social networks, I say do it again, particularly Twitter. A lot of times, like I like to call Twitter, it's the land of our greatest hits for some of our accounts. It's a place where if we know a post did really well and we repost it a year later, chances are a different group of people are going to see it because the feed moves so fast on Twitter. So it's a good opportunity to get quick hits back over to your website to a totally new audience. So look for opportunities like that where you can repurpose content. Another way we found great ways in one of our other businesses to reuse our content was to take, some of the videos that had been previously posted on Facebook and turn them into blog articles on the website and reshare them just in a different format. So there are different ways that you could look for repurposing content, and that'll help you as well with all of your post types. Um, Finally, you need to, on certain social networks, be thinking about hashtags as part of your post planning process. What hashtags am I going to include here? I usually encourage people, do your hashtag research really before you get to this step. And know generally what hashtags you should be rotating on your post. And then, depending on what you say in your post, you're always going to come up with more ideas for additional hashtags. Our experience shows us that hashtags work best on networks like Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. Those are some of the networks where you're going to find that you get the most value out of having those hashtags attached to your post. And then the number of hashtags might vary depending on which one of those social networks that you're on. So those are a few tips. Now, Kylie, I know you had a few resources, kind of as we wrap up. Can you share some of those resources where people can find more information?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find these in the notes below, but the major resources that we've compiled that you can use to plan out your social media and the different areas you need to focus on that Sonia talked about um, include for knowing what's going on all year and planning out trends and, the annual things, and as well as around new upcoming developments and news. You can go check out our blog on breaking news, shifting your marketing's frontline content. For 2021, you can check out our high ranking video styles. And then for having the procedures in place for developments that might come up, you can check out our digital marketing practices during a global crisis blog, as well as our podcast, What Digital Transformation Looks Like in the New Normal, and other blogs that we have where you can check out how to have tools, procedures, and your team in place throughout the year as you plan your social media strategies. Our guide to virtual meeting platforms, the social media management platforms right for your business, tips for work-life balance when work is on your phone, and best practices for working from home, because making sure that you are having self-care, and self-care around social media as a marketer is important, in having your team in place, because if you can make sure that you're taking care of yourself well, you can make sure to take care of your social media well. And finally, you can also check out other upcoming content, such as growing your social media team, and either the writing the perfect Instagram caption, and check out other social media blogs that we have, such as hacking hashtags, that will help you around those more meticulous posts.
All right. So, you guys, there will be a list, of course, at the bottom, and check those out. Those will be some great resources as you continue your post planning process. Remember, social media is all about telling stories. So, keep that in mind as you're publishing across social networks, and we wish you well. Look for us again. If you have any questions, tag me on social media at Sonia Crystal, Sonia with a J, Crystal with a C, or at Go Getter Group. You can find us on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, and we're happy to answer your questions on an upcoming 10-minute marketing podcast. Until then, thanks for listening. Take care.